Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? It is game day on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Bombers, second game of the season, first on the road, happens tonight in the nation's capital. We're all over at Darrin Bauming of Bonfire Sports is going to join us. Coming up first off and tee up tonight's game. Zach Collaros against his old understudy, Drew Brown. No Kenny Lawler and no Brady Oliveira. Not great news for the Bombers, but lots to talk about for a big one tonight. That's a 6:30 start. Cup final gets going just after 7 o'clock. Edmonton and Florida. Yes, the Panthers have arrived. The game will be played tonight. We'll touch on that and much more with Ken Wiebe. We'll also get into some insider reports, potential moves of certainly Nikolai Ehlers of the Winnipeg Jets, and a new name that was added to the mix yesterday, former Jet Patrick Laine. David Pagnotta of the fourth period will join us from Edmonton. Later on in the show, we'll get the latest scuttlebutt from around the Cup final, as well as the league, and we'll certainly dive into more of the Jets offseason and find out what's the delay with the assistant coaches with our pal Ken Wiebe a little bit later on. Seabears in action tonight. Actually, it's funny. If you were watching the lock shop, figured there's a lot of people pulling for Edmonton. I don't feel good about the Bombers covering 7, but we did put just a straight up Oilers win, Bombers win, Seabears win parlay. That's over in the lock shop exclusives at Coolbet if you want to jump on that. And of course, really excited to get down to Vegas in a couple of weeks. We had some good news today about where we're staying, and it's all coming together. So a special thanks to our friends at Coolbet for making all of that happen. And looking forward to having Patty and maybe Jake too jump in for Dusty tomorrow in the lock shop, because he will be off to call a couple CFL games this weekend. But the focus in the CFL tonight is in Ottawa. Bombers, Redblacks, Ottawa's home opener. We'll lead off with that today on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Just before we welcome Michael Remis in, let me thank all the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. And by the way, thanks for all the great feedback on the inaugural edition of CFL 110 yesterday, which is available right now on the Winnipeg Sports Talk podcast feed, although we will be doing a standalone feed for that for maybe some people outside of the market that want specifically the CFL content. It is available right now. If you missed it, maybe check that out after you watch Winnipeg Sports Talk today at the WST YouTube channel. And a huge thanks to Pat Kanuga and Garage Living Winnipeg for helping us get that off the ground. You can hit Pat up at 999-1234 to find out how you can revolutionize your living space and your garage. Also want to thank Rolly's Transfer, Consolidated Supply, Manitoba Battery and Canadian Club, Little Brown Jug, Princess Auto, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, the Beer Can next door on Sherbrooke, of course our buddies at Hoagie Boys, the Gold Eyes, the Cinnaboya Downs, Breezy Bend. How about this hat Corey gave me? Absolute beauty. Love it. And Royal Sports, Boston Pizza. And we'll get to a why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Welcome to everybody listening on podcast. And welcome to the gang hanging out in the Winnipeg Sports Talk chat live on YouTube today. And welcome to Michael Remis. Remo, what's up?
Hey, I'm in a really good mood today, Hustler. Might be the nice weather. It's like not raining for the first time in a while, but we've got some really good games tonight. Stanley Cup Final, Game 3, Edmonton looking to get on the board. The Bombers looking to rebound against Ottawa. Their former backup QB, Drew Brown, now starting. Big bounce back coming for the Bombers here tonight. And then the Seabears are on national TV on TSN. So big night. And there's some baseball always as well. I always got that on in the background. But big night for multiple TV watching. So get out you got multiple TV setups, or I usually got a tablet going as well. So easy to watch multiple sports at once these days, Huss, with the apps. I got the your TV provider probably has an app. Bell, Shaw, they're both very, very good.
Well, I mean, listen, that is one way to do it. The other way to do it is to head down to your local or the Boston Pizza around the corner and make sure you're at a place with both games on.
Yeah.
Although, I know the BPs have all been playing the sound for the Cup Final and the playoffs. I do wonder about the battle for sound. This has been something that I've been thinking about quite a bit today. Do the places go with the Bomber sound, which is going to be starting at 6:30? I tend to lean that way. But I know there'll be a lot of people out to watch the hockey game. That will be a challenge, I'm sure, for people. But the bottom line is you got to be at a place where you can watch both of those, and no better place than your local BP to do all of that. Listen, we'll spend plenty of time talking puck and the Cup Final with Ken and with Pagnotta a little bit later on. And, maybe before we dive into the Bomber game today, Remo, let's just quickly touch on a couple of these stories that do have connection to the Winnipeg Jets before we dive in and get ready for the game with Bauming. Interested to see, we're finally getting some reports from the National Hockey League insiders, Darrin Drager and Pierre LeBrun. LeBrun had a good write-up today in the Athletic, kind of building off of the insider trading news yesterday. Obviously, Nikolai Ehlers is in the mix. We've heard that before. That's no surprise. It's been Jet sources reportedly that have been saying that it doesn't look like an extension is on the table. Although I did notice some increased optimism from a number of people in the chat and people that I talked to last night after the show, based on Scott Arneal's comments around, his thoughts of Nikolai Ehlers, where he sees him fitting in and how important he is to the team. It doesn't seem like, to quote the report, that Ehlers trade discussions not on the front burner right now. And I'm really interested to see whether while we're down in Vegas and everything happens before the draft, if we hear a lot more smoke around that, or if that's something that they slow play and see what happens come training camp, knowing that there is the potential, if you don't make a move, you could lose the player for nothing at the end of the next season for free agency. But I get where Arneal's coming from, Reem. He needs Nikolai Ehlers. Nikolai Ehlers is a huge part of this hockey club, and a loss of Ehlers for futures or turning things around creates a big, big hole up front. And I'm not sure that Arneal's too keen to get going for his second crack at head coaching in the National Hockey League without a players like Ehlers on the lineup.
Yeah, what was the line yesterday in the conversation with Frank Seravalli? I want Nikolai Ehlers. I need him. And you look at the way the team looked, it seemed like they didn't really have a lot of speed. And what does Nikolai Ehlers bring? He bring a lot of speed. And I know, the playoff numbers haven't been there, but you got to get to the playoffs, and you hope that, his numbers from the regular season eventually catch up to the playoffs, because, yes, there is a big difference there. But when he is on the ice, he outscores his opponent routinely, and why wouldn't you want a guy like that on your team? But when a player is entering the last year of their contract, this is just the type of conversations you have in any market. It's going to come up, and for a guy, who thought maybe earned some more opportunity either on the top line or on the top power play and hasn't gotten it, it's natural. These conversations are going to come up. We had them all last summer. But it's fine. I put out some of these reports on X, formerly known as Twitter. Everyone's like, well, you guys, there were reports last year in the Athletic saying Hellebuck 100% will not re-sign with Winnipeg.
Bye-bye.
And what happened on Thanksgiving while you were in Target in the produce aisle? Oh, Hellebuck and Scheifele signed 7-year extensions. So we'll see. Again, we'll see what happens. I like following the reports. It's fun. Gives us something to talk about. But, they're listening. Look, there's Kevin Shelvadeoff. He knows the situation he's in, and when the phone rings and it's another GM, you're not going to hit do not disturb. You're going to answer it and have a conversation, and I'm sure they're having a number of conversations about a number of players right now.
Hey, listen, that's why you got to tune into WST every day. Get the latest from the insiders, what everyone's talking about, what everyone's saying, and when it happens, we will break it all down for you. Now, there's some other players in play, if you will, according to the insiders. But let's just focusing on Ehlers right now. This is the latest from Darrin Drager on insider trading on the talented Winnipeg Jet winger's future.
And a lot of speculation around one of their veteran forwards, and that's Nikolai Ehlers. He, too, is going into the final year of his contract. And I know that General Manager Kevin Cheveldayoff is at least open to having conversations with interested general managers. I think of the Carolina Hurricanes, potentially, the connection there with Marty Necas also in play. But this is more a financial issue for the Winnipeg Jets. They'd like to keep Nikolai Ehlers and extend him, but they've got Kyle Connors, who's got 2 years left on his deal, and he is going to be a big money ticket. So the speculation in Toronto and Winnipeg will continue until further notice.
All right, so there's Drake's report, and it doesn't seem to be like this is not one of these issues that the player and the agent and the team are in a big battle or anything like that. I think it's just reality, and Drake sort of mentioned that. I mean, you've had incredible production for both Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers on their contracts right now. When you sign the second big deal on either player, you're paying a lot of money, you're probably paying a lot of term, and it probably handcuffs you in getting the other player. And I don't want to go again. It seemed like half of last year we were talking about Connor versus Ehlers, top line with Mark Scheifele and all that. We'll save that conversation for later. But there is a reality with his contract coming up first. They do need to make a decision. I think they've got to have a pretty good idea about the future of Kyle Connor, too, at the same time. What is interesting is how that ties into the other name that Dregs mentioned right there in Marty Necas. And Pierre LeBrun wrote today in The Athletic on the Carolina Hurricanes that they've heard from nearly every team in the league on forward Martin Necas, and the sound of it have narrowed the market to 5 to 7 potential matches. That doesn't necessarily mean things will end up in a trade. Eric Tulsky, leading the conversations for the Canes, has set a high price on what they feel is a star caliber player. LeBrun continues on with, I don't believe those 5 to 7 teams has yet to produce an offer that would get it done, but the Canes will keep working on it because they also don't feel there's a time crunch on any of this. The Winnipeg Jets at the top of the list. The Winnipeg Jets, Chicago Blackhawks, Habs, Flames, and Bruins are amongst the teams that have shown general interest. Whether they are among the 5 to 7 Carolina sees as matches, I am not sure. Necas is a very intriguing player, coming off a strong season, 24 goals, 29 assists, 53 points in 77 games. He is a center. He shoots right. Similar numbers to Ehlers. I would say the cost, because he is an RFA, which certainly is a positive for the Winnipeg Jets if you're acquiring a player like that, would be significant. But I'll tell you what, it probably would offset a lot of what you'd lose if you get Ehlers. But a lot of moving pieces right now, Remis, and a lot of genuine intrigue as to how the top 6 of the Winnipeg Jets is going to look like, and whether Nikolai Ehlers will be a part of it, whether there'll be a younger player like Brad Lambert getting a shot in there at the beginning of the year, or do the Winnipeg Jets make some sort of a move that potentially could include a significant commitment to a player like Necas that's not on the Winnipeg Jets right now?
Yeah, and we also talked about Cole Perfetti yesterday. Well, what role will he play in the top 6? And I found it interesting that Dreger brought up Kyle Connor's next contract. Now, I hadn't really thought about that. That was, way down the road, but he's got 1 year after this year. And then you'd have to, in the same spot with him, you're going to have to make some big decisions. So Ehlers, he's got 1 year left. You got to make a decision now or prepare what you're going to do if you can or cannot re-sign him. And Necas, he's kind of in a similar position. I mean, he had a really good year, not this past year, but the year before, 71 points in 82 games. He's a former first-round pick, 12th overall in 2017, 25 years old, as you said, right-handed shot. He kind of had, as I saw T. Will referring him to a chat, as streaky, and kind of played on like every line in Carolina this year. Sometimes he was on the top line, not all the time, but he was second line, third line. Sometimes even they moved him up and down, but whatever line he was on usually did pretty well, and it was kind of reminiscent of Jets and Nikolai Ehlers. So he had 53 points in 77 games. Doesn't always get top power play time or the top ice time. He did average 17.9 21 minutes a game, a bit down from the year before where he averaged 18.25 per game. But I do wonder if there would be a fit there. This guy's looking for a new change of scenery. As you said, RFA, so you would have to sign him to a contract.
He shoots right, which would be welcome within the Winnipeg Jet lineup as well. And as I mentioned, he is an RFA. So you'd have a little bit more ability, I think, to, get the deal that you're looking for that would take care of both the player and the team, as opposed to the uncertainty of Nikolai Ehlers. And listen, if Ehlers is traded, I would have to say that it would be in the Jets' best interest to either extend the player beforehand, similarly to what they did with Pierre-Luc Dubois, or at least allow the Ehlers camp to be in contact with the new team to potentially get an extension, because I think the value of a player, if you've got him beyond this season, is a lot more to Winnipeg than it would be if someone's taken a chance on Ehlers for one season without any guarantees that he'll be there beyond next year.
And that's always a consideration. We've seen so many more of these deals, Hess, where Matthew Tkachuk, where they had the signing, or it was Dubois. You hadn't really seen like sign and trades like that for a long time in the NHL, but it does give you, he's got 1 year left, so it's not like an RFA situation, but you do, when you're trading for a guy, you do want to know, hey, is this guy going to be here for a while, or are we only getting 1 year out of him? So it does affect the return, and again, Nikolai Ehlers will wait and see, but a lot of conversation about a number of players, and the insiders, especially Darrin Dreger, certainly keyed in on what the Winnipeg Jets and Kevin Cheveldayoff are up to. As it's June 13. How many, the Stanley Cup's still going on. How many things on your timeline be like, this date, X years ago, this team won the Stanley Cup? So
I know
it's kind of so weird. We're in off-season talk, every other team, but two teams are still in action. It is kind of weird, but yes, we are into off-season and draft talk, as it is also Game 3 of the Cup Final.
Well, you know what? It is fun. I mean, you've got all the insiders and a lot of the people covering the league together following the Stanley Cup Finals, so maybe a little bit more information comes out. But, I mean, the bottom line is it has to. I mean, as soon... Well, I heard that the Florida Panthers had their pro scouts meeting this week in Fort Lauderdale, and the Oilers are doing the same thing in Edmonton right now. I mean, the GM's job is basically done. It's now up to the coaches and the players to go get the trophy. But it is a wild time in the National Hockey League with so much going on in such a short period of time and so many situations needing clarity. I was listening to some of the guys on Overdrive yesterday, and they were just speaking of, first of all, they were kind of saying about how we always get all these rumors about these big trades that never happen, which was somewhat funny. Although I do think there's the potential. I mean, there's always the potential for moves. Whether they come to fruition, I guess, is the other big side of it. But as soon as this Cup Final ends, it is a quick turnaround to the draft. And from the draft, people are going to be getting on planes Saturday night or Sunday from Vegas. And then free agents are going to be signing on July 1st. So we're going to have lots to get to in and around the Jets and in around the National Hockey League as we get closer to, of course, WST at the Draft in Vegas, presented by Coolbet, beginning on Wednesday, June 26th from Sin City. Remo, the other name that came out yesterday in Pierre LeBrun's article and in the Insider Moves is that of Patrik Laine. And listen, Laine's looking for a fresh start. The Columbus Blue Jackets intend to work with Laine's camp, led by his agent, to find him a fresh start with a new team. He obviously had a very rough year last year, spent the second half of the season in the NHLPA Player Assistance Program. Said he also had a minor shoulder cleanup procedure, but that's not expected to be an issue. What is an issue, though, is the $8.7 million remaining on his contract for the next 2 years. Do I think there'd be a lot of interest in giving Laine a chance to jumpstart his career again in another market? Absolutely. I'm not sure what the appetite will be to take on that deal, considering the trajectory of Patrick's career over the last few seasons.
Yeah, he had a tough injury-plagued season, and health has been a problem for him in terms of staying on the ice. Just in terms of physical, as you said, a couple injuries, and he has been in the player assistance program, but 18 games this past season, 9 points, 55 games in 22-23, 56 in 21-22. I think teams would be wanting to take a chance. You hear, Patrick Laine, he's ready, available in a trade. The guy scored 36 goals in his rookie season, 44 in his second, but he hasn't touched 30 since 2019-20. 2018-19 was the last time he scored 30. So health has been a problem, and I think teams would be interested. But you see, $8.7 million. That's tough. That's a tough sell for a guy who hasn't shown he can stay healthy. Tough for a guy who might be perceived as a bit one-dimensional. And he hasn't scored 30 goals in a number of years. So I think there'd be interest, but that salary is tough with a lot of teams up against the salary cap. The cap is going up, which we know, but I'm curious what teams would be willing to give up for him. And I think everyone here I think he's got a lot of fans here still in this chat. You want to see him have success and looking for a fresh start somewhere else. Just hasn't been able to stay healthy in Columbus. I think that's kind of the biggest thing here.
No, and listen, I see what everyone's talking about in chat. I mean, the Pope's in the house. What's up, Jets Pope? Bring him back. By the way, I think the Jets Pope went on one of those trips to the Stanley Cup Final. Congratulations on that, and have a great time. But I will admit, late last night, I was standing on my balcony looking outside, and it did cross my mind. Could Patrick Laine come back to the Winnipeg Jets? I mean, it was something that I think it's a fun conversation to have amongst fans. It's not really based in reality. I'll tell you what, you pumped some true serum into Scott Arniel and said, what do you think 29 would look like back on that power play? And I think he'd be positive to it. And I kind of think that, there is something to be said for familiarity. Now, again, we don't really know about what happened behind the scenes. I think Blake Wheeler was a big part of that, and obviously Blake Wheeler is no longer with the organization. I think if you had, pie in the sky, if something like that happened and he came back, I think the scenario, the culture of the team is far different. And I think Patrick's sort of been humbled a little bit and learned some things about the rigors of pro sports that I don't necessarily think it would be a bad thing. And for Patrick, maybe it could be a great thing. It just comes down to the economics of it. And I have no idea whether that would be something the Winnipeg Jets would even entertain. So while it is a fun conversation to have and how it could work and what it might work, I mean, I could sit there and tell you if the Blue Jackets are just looking with their new general manager to get that money off the books, there's 2 years left of 8.7. You put together some sort of a package with either a Pionk or a Nate Schmidt, so the money works a little bit more. I mean, you could fire up the trade machine and figure out a way to do it. There's just so many other intangibles in and around it that I think that makes it a fun conversation to have, but not anything that's really based in reality. But I did have a fun time thinking about it last night.
I think people loved his talent. There was nothing like watching him go down and rip goals either on a one-timer or he'd have some shots from distance, then they go in and you just be like, oh my God. But yeah, I think that ship has sailed. I don't think his salary fits, and they're not going to just give him away on a salary dump. Columbus, I think, is an interesting team. They have a lot of young talent there, and there are some Darrin Dreger did note that new general manager Don Waddell hasn't given Pascal Vincent a vote of confidence, so there could be a coaching change there as well. But maybe Laine kind of doesn't fit within their timeline. What else came in and said, hey, you know what, it's going to take time for us to get back to where we want to be. And maybe they do try to trade him. I don't know who's going to have that 8.7. Like, is it going to be a team that needs to get to the cap floor, like Anaheim or San Jose or Chicago's looking to get better? They got a lot of room. Or what about anytime you have a player with a high salary? I think Utah under consideration with a lot of picks and cap room. I don't know. Is a contending team? You know, they're all up against the cap. Like, do they have room?
And what needs to happen for a team, considering last season with him being in the player assistance program? I mean, how much assurance do you need to have regardless of what you're giving up, just to take that on with so much uncertainty. I mean, listen, I know it's a very polarizing topic. There's people that are saying, make that happen. There's a ton that are saying there's no way that ship has sailed. I totally get it. But even removing the Winnipeg Jets from the entire situation, if you're going to be taking on over $17 million of salary for the next 2 seasons, you have to be sure of what you're getting. And that makes it very problematic for Don Waddell right now, because I'm not really sure how you exactly do that. We'll talk about it with Pagnotta a little later on. Ken Wiebe's coming up as well. But we got to get to tonight's game. And to do that, we will be joined in just a minute by Darrin Bauming of Bonfire Sports. If you haven't already, make sure to check out must-viewing appointment for Bomber fans. Bauming and Bluto chopping it up. Had a great time watching the guys get ready for the Ottawa game yesterday. Before we bring in Darrin, if you're making moves this summer, give our friends at Rollies Transfer a call to take the stress, as much stress as possible, out of a very stressful endeavor, which is moving, of course, and do it with the family-owned and operated, most trusted name in moving in Manitoba for over 60 years, Rollies Transfer. With their extended logistics business, they're not just all over Winnipeg, but all over southern Manitoba, meaning if you are moving in or out of the city from the southern Manitoba region, they've got flexible routes, timing, and of course, great prices as well. Hit the new website at rollies.com. Click on the request a quote feature. Let them know what you're moving, when you're moving, where you're going. And the friendly folks at Rollies will turn it around quickly with a competitive quote for you and get you on the move. Rollies Transfer is Manitoba's most trusted name in moving services for over 60 years. Find out more and request your quote today at rollies.com. Folks, I know it's been raining a little bit, sometimes a little bit too much for all of us. If you do have irrigation needs and more, the folks at Consolidated Supply are ready to take care of you. The leaders in irrigation systems, artificial turf, and of course, golf carts is the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba, not to mention other amazing options for your property, including hot tubs and incredible outdoor kitchens. They also are the leaders in small engine parts and repair, and now have the entire line of Crest power tools, including the satellite-guided RTK mower, which needs to be seen to be believed. Pop on down and see them at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. Hey, you got to power those golf carts and power tools and boats and Sea-Doos and everything that's getting you through the summer. And you know who takes care of that for you. It's got to be Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery. 2 locations now in the city of Winnipeg. The original on Logan Avenue and now in the south side of the city at 452 Dover Court. Few things you can count on from Manitoba Battery. The best selection in batteries, period, and the best prices in town, bar none, beating the pants off the big box stores. For all your battery needs, Donnie and the gang are there for you, and they'll also deliver them to you for free with any purchase over $60 inside the perimeter of Winnipeg. It's just that easy. Give them a call, 488-0500, or go online to manitobabattery.com, and Donnie and the gang will take care of you quick and easy and get you ready for the weekend and the rest of Manitoba summer. And just before we welcome in Darrin Bauming to talk Bombers, Bomber fans will be back at Princess Auto Stadium next Friday, enjoying a few Canadian clubs on the first day of summer on a Friday night. Of course, Canadian Club is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and is available throughout Princess Auto Stadium at each and every game. And don't forget the Canadian Club and Ginger Ale pre-mixed cocktail in cans, available both at Bomber games and your local beer vendor. And for all the great taste of Canada's oldest, best Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club, check out the CC display on your next visit to your Manitoba Liquor Marts. All right, game day. Let's try this again. Didn't go very well in week 1. And now the Bombers hit the road to the nation's capital. Darrin Bauming of Bonfire Sports is on the Bomber beat and joins us now. Bomber, what's going on, man? How are you?
Feeling good, Huss. It's a game day, and with Winnipeg looking to rewrite the ship, it's going to be a fun night tonight.
It was, man, I had a great time jumping on after CFL 110 and checking out you and Wiebe do your thing. Wiebe was pretty rattled after that game last week, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, he was right too, because in our pregame going into week one, he was saying how, back in the day, they used to play 4 preseason games and the starters played all of those games. And yesterday, in hindsight, he's talking about Cal Murphy's mentality of we're going to beat you up in practice. So then the game comes easy to you, and that the players hated that at the time, but it worked. And was Winnipeg not prepared? Were Winnipeg starters maybe in need of a preseason tune-up prior to week 1 of the regular season? Maybe not. I don't know. It's early in the season, right? And the CFL is really goofy. You never know what you're going to get on a week-to-week basis. It's tons of fun to, bet on and play fantasy and all those things because there's so many, wild cards that can, hit the river, if you will. And for Winnipeg, like they're playing the defending Grey Cup champs in the Montreal Alouettes. They came to play. I think the shock was that Winnipeg played as poorly as they did, and it happened at home, a place where they were 8-1 last season, and I think they've only lost like 3 or 4 games in the last 4 years at IG Field or now Princess Auto Stadium. So, yeah, Walby was rattled, but you're facing a team now in Ottawa. You got to go on the road. I think that can be a good thing to gel the team and to reset a little bit. But you're playing a team in Ottawa that knew their first game of the season was going to be against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They are prepared. They are going to be ready. And Drew Brown, you talk about a quarterback familiar with the opponent. Well, this is one that literally practiced against the Blue Bombers defensive starters for the last 3 seasons. So, it's going to be interesting to watch Drew Brown and see if he can make something happen with the Redblacks.
The quarterback matchup is pretty juicy, as you mentioned. I mean, Drew Brown, the understudy under Zach Collaros, few better that you could be learning under, now ready to spread his wings as a starting quarterback. And listen, all eyes are going to be on Brown and what he does in his first start. From a Bomber perspective, all eyes on Zach Collaros because he wasn't sharp. He, by his own admission, was nowhere near his best or where they need him to be in game number 1. And things get even, like the offense wasn't rolling to start with, and now you're down Kenny Lawler and Brady Oliveira. This is a game that Zach Collaros certainly can, and I think needs to, Darrin, really kind of take over this football game, remind everyone why he has all the rings and the MOP awards, and lead the Bombers, in a difficult situation considering the way they started and 2 monster players, monster parts of that offense not making the trip.
Zach Collaros' numbers in week 1 were okay, but the numbers did not tell the story. The offense could not get anything going. And by getting anything going, it's kind of the football term of saying, they couldn't find consistency. They couldn't move the chains. 4 of their first 5 possessions in week 1 were 2-and-outs. And the one in the middle of that wasn't a 2-and-out, was a 4-play, 10-yard drive following the Brian Cole interception that set them up with nice field position. They weren't able to get a touchdown. The only touchdown the offense scored was in garbage time when Johnny Augustine, coincidentally, who will start for the Blue Bombers at running back this week, he punched one in and maybe gave them a bit of a shot in the arm, a bit of energy that they needed at that point. Collaros made some missed some passes. The ones that you fans out there are remembering, Collaros remembers too, and spoke to those specifically. Is he going to be better? I expect him to be better. There's a reason Zach Collaros is widely regarded as the best player in the league and the best quarterback in the CFL as well. The losses of Kenny Lawler and Brady Oliveira, Kenny for a good stretch of time here with a broken arm, and Brady, well, we'll see. He's on the 1-game injured list. It's officially listed as a knee, but is this the same thing that kept him out of training camp as well? We don't know that. But those 2 losses, first and foremost, you're not going to replace those 2 guys. Each of them individually, they're very, very difficult to replace. And I would say even more difficult to replace a Kenny Lawler with just the type of target he is, the hands that he has, the way that he can make somebody miss both running routes and going up and getting the football. he's unmatched when it comes to those sorts of talents. When you look at the receiving talent across the CFL, Brady Oliveira, obviously a downhill runner, physical. Is Johnny Augustine going to bring that same skill set? No. And will things change? Well, Johnny Augustine said as much. It's not going to be a drastic change, but they are going to add a couple different things that maybe are more inclined to his skill set, or at least the offense as a whole, the skill set of the healthy players that they have in the lineup. So, Collaros is going to need to put this offense on his back. Buck Pierce, as offensive coordinator, needs to build a game plan, and he already has, obviously, with the game being tonight, but have that game plan and execute that game plan effectively and get some continuity going, get some consistency going early in the game. Often you say when an offense struggles, let's get back to basics. I personally think Winnipeg needs to go beyond the basics, get creative, use Chris Streveler in different ways, use Nick Dembski in different ways, use Dalton Schoen and Johnny Augustine and all the other guys that they have. And let's see what some of these young rookies have as well. Keurig Wheatfall is going to step in for Kenny Lawler for this first stretch of time here. They got other young receivers, Ontario Wilson, kick returner Myron Mitchell, who could factor in on offense. Maybe some of those guys have a skill or a bit of a weapon that Ottawa's not expecting. So, Winnipeg really does need to play better offensively, first and foremost, based on how they performed week one.
Yeah, you mentioned Keurig Wheatfall, and I was just about to ask you about that. I mean, he's been on the practice squad. In fact, if you go to the Bombers site right now, he's still listed on the practice squad, but there he is in a starter's position for tonight's game. The other guys that are there, you mentioned Mitchell and Ontario Wilson, who's going to be starting at slot back. Thoughts on anything you can tell Bomber fans that have not had a chance to see those guys? But I'll say this, I think we're going with a heavy dose of Mr. D. Schoen and N. Dembski tonight. Those are going to be guys that Zach's going to have to be leaning on because he knows them. They're consistent. They can be counted on. But fill us in on some of these new guys, in particular Wheatfall, who's going to be over in Kenny Lawler's spot.
Yeah, Buck Pierce, when asked about Keurig Wheatfall and what he brings, says he's a very smart football player and has great size and speed combo, to succeed in the CFL. So often with receivers, it can be a bit of a learning curve coming to Canada, learning the waggle, learning the different offenses, knowing that there's 12 guys on the other side of the field instead of 11. As a receiver, often there's options when it comes to the route that they're running in the pass tree. And it depends on where the safety is or if it's zone or man coverage. And all of those things really, change and adjust from American football to Canadian football and that extra player on the field. So, for Keurig Wheatfall, yeah, he was on the practice roster to start the season, but, sometimes you might have a guy or two that, once they mentally figure it out, they're going to be able to help contribute on the field. And I think that's been the case with Keurig Wheatfall. Josh Johnson is still on the practice roster. I expect him to get a shot at some point this season in the receiving corps as well. And you mentioned Ontario Wilson and Myron Mitchell. Of course, Mitchell handling the kick and punt return duties. He's a big dude, physical runner. He's got enough to worry about in the return game to get something going there in Winnipeg's special teams. But him and Ontario Wilson could also be options that Zach Collaros can go to. And, for Winnipeg, this is a resilient group. That's what the coaching staff and the players have been saying all week long. Regardless of the challenges that are in front of them, of being playing really poor in week one and being without Kenny Lawler for a month plus and being without Brady Oliveira this week, they're resilient. They know how to win. They've been there before. There's no real pressure here to suddenly find a way to win. It's just about getting back and setting that standard, as Nick Dembski put it in my conversation with him, just getting it back and resetting the standard this football team holds itself to.
Darrin, I was a little hard on the defense right out of the gate yesterday, and then upon further review, or as I should say, after the game last Thursday, they were put in some real tough situations just because the Bomber offense was simply not moving the football at all. But they get their leader out of Big Hill back. How significant of an addition is that to the Blue Bomber defense? And just your thoughts on their challenge against an Ottawa team they certainly don't have any tape on, although they know a thing or two about going up against Drew Brown in practice.
Yeah. Getting Adam Bighill back, without any exaggeration, it's huge for Winnipeg. We know how smart Adam Bighill is and how much of a leader he is and how much of a teacher he is. And while he wasn't on the field last week and missed a good chunk of training camp, he's obviously still very involved and right there as kind of a player coach. That's a good thing to have. To if he's not able to play, to have that, influence on the team in a real positive way. But having him on the field, using his eyes, maybe Adam Bighill's biggest weapon right now, using his eyes to assess what Ottawa's doing offensively. New offensive coordinator Tommy Condell joined the Redblacks this year. Obviously a new starting quarterback in Drew Brown. A lot of the same receivers. They've added some guys as well. Different running back with Devontae Williams being on the 6-game injured list to start the season. They're going to need Adam Bighill's eyes to be sharp and to help them both when they're on the field and when they're off the field, looking at the iPads, looking at the tape to ensure that, that they're seeing things right and that everybody's on the same page to defend the Ottawa Redblacks offensive attack. It's a huge re-addition to this team. And I'll just say this, Hustler, there are people out there that say, well, the Bombers are getting old and Adam Bighill isn't the same player he's always been. When Adam Bighill is healthy, he is the same player he has always been. I don't really understand that. I don't know if it's, expectations versus, him being injured in the Grey Cup and not being, or playing injured and not being truly 100% in a game that, people are still talking about and people still feel deep because it was a championship game and a loss. But Adam Bighill still has a ton of football left in him. And, well, if he's as healthy as he says he is, he's going to be a huge boon and boost to this Blue Bombers defense.
It's going to be really neat to see what Drew Brown does in Ottawa. There's always been connections between Winnipeg and Ottawa, it seems, with Lapo going there and obviously Bobby Dice. I see Javon Santos Knox in the middle. But, I mean, with him not having played a game, Darrin, what do you expect from Ottawa? And what are you looking for? I mean, as far as, who the Bombers have to be looking out for. You see Rhymes there. He's a game breaker. In the backfield, they've got, Armstead's day-to-day, and we'll see exactly if that means that he'll be out there today. But just as far as what the Bombers are facing tonight, do you have much of a read on this Ottawa team, considering they've only played the 2 preseason games and now it's go time with the new quarterback?
Yeah, Jalen Acklin, obviously the other receiver that is really, really dangerous on their offense. But, look, for people that have followed my work, I've been saying this for almost 3 full years now. Drew Brown will be a starting quarterback in the CFL one day, and that day is today. Obviously, Jeremiah Masoli suffering another really nasty injury late last season. Hopefully, he'll be able to return to football later this year. But it's Drew Brown's team. It's Drew Brown's offense. And as I mentioned, new offensive coordinator Tommy Condell and a lot of that weaponry that Drew Brown has around him. Some changes on the O-line. We'll see how this offense is. It really is a wait and see anytime you have a new starting quarterback that doesn't have a lot of game experience in the CFL like Drew Brown. Defensively, their front 6, their D-line and their linebacking core, adding a Darius Pickett in free agency, huge. As a strong side linebacker, a dime backer, he is going to be all over the field. He'll drop to safety. He'll rush the quarterback. He'll cover the running back, Johnny Augustine or Chris Streveler coming out of the backfield. He is really a guy that can be all over the place. Adding a Darius Pickett to the linebacking core that they have with, Frankie Griffith, and Lorenzo Malden and Bryce Carter on the defensive line. That is a really formidable group for Winnipeg to face when they need their offense to find a spark. The defensive backfield, they got Money Hunter at boundary corner. Everybody familiar with him. Great nickname, obviously, and a veteran of this league. But a lot of new pieces in their defensive backfield, in their secondary. So maybe it is up to Zach Collaros and Buck Pierce to ensure that, if there is some wrinkle or some wrench that they can throw at an inexperienced pass defense in Ottawa, that, that's what they do tonight.
Hey, DB, we'll be looking forward to the post-game coverage tonight, right after the game over on Bonfire Sports. I did quickly want to ask you about the other games in the CFL this week. Dusty and I were going back and forth on this Calgary BC game on the spread, but Hamilton Saskatchewan is a pick'em right now. I thought Hamilton could have been much more in that game if their receivers had done a better job of catching very catchable balls from Bill Levi Mitchell. But how impressed were you with the Riders? And who are you taking in this game, Saskatchewan-Hamilton, which is the final game on the docket this weekend?
Yeah, not just saying this because I'm a Winnipeg-based reporter. I do try to take my job seriously and objectively. I wasn't impressed, honestly. I wasn't that impressed with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I thought the Edmonton Elks in week 1 gift-wrapped that game for Saskatchewan. They turned the ball over late in the game. They gave Saskatchewan opportunities to beat them with big plays. I thought Edmonton had that game. It was theirs to lose, and they chose to lose it. This week, the pick'em with Hamilton, obviously Hamilton showing a lot of really good things in week 1, and Bo Levi Mitchell, and one of the most prolific receivers in the CFL today, Tim White in that Hamilton Tiger Cats offense, James Butler and other guys that they got. Bo looked mobile in the pocket. He looked quick. He was able to do some things with his feet and deliver throws effectively. So, Hamilton, although coming off a loss, I think they're a team that, is probably on the ascent. I think their biggest addition this year, Hustler, was adding head coach Scott Milanovic. Biggest free agent signing for my money in the CFL this past offseason. So it being a pick'em, I get it. I like Hamilton in that game. The Montreal-Edmonton game, it's going to be tough for Edmonton. They are getting a little bit healthier, but Montreal looks really, really good. Winnipeg was not good, but Montreal, you got to give them credit. They played really well in week 1. They go to Edmonton in week 2, and I probably give them, the advantage on that. And then the game, obviously, Saturday, Calgary at BC. I mean, Calgary, everybody was picking them to finish last in the West, myself included. I don't know if Jake Mayer, what he did this offseason, if it was ashwagandha or yoga or the hot cold tub, whatever it was, he looks like a different dude out there. I think Calgary is a team that, BC's coming off a tough loss. They're going to have to go on the road, Calgary that is, and, show that week 1 wasn't an anomaly, that it wasn't just a mirage or a fluke, because BC is going to be hungry at home. 50 cents playing. There's going to be 50,000 people in the stadium for that game. It's going to be a huge, huge atmosphere. I'm really looking forward to that game. I honestly look at Calgary, BC as the CFL game of the week.
Can't wait for it, Bauming, and looking forward to your post-game coverage. Of course, the Bomber pregame with Chris Walby is up right now on the Bonfire YouTube channel. And about 10, 15 minutes after the game, you guys will fire it up and break it all down?
Yeah, on the road, probably even sooner. We're going to fire up the bonfire and have the fire well stoked for when people are ready to join us after the game.
Looking forward to it, dude. Thanks for jumping on. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Huss. Thanks, man.
Just talking, and we'll get to this more on the Coolbet lines, but I did, kind of thinking about the players that are out for the Bombers and knowing who's going to be really, counted on tonight. Did do up a little WST parlay over in the Coolbet exclusives. Dalton Schoen, 80 yards receiving or more. Nick Debsky, 5 or more receptions. Strevler to get in, and the Bombers to win. I'm not touching that spread. 7 points in the situation that we're going into, I think, is way, way too much. But that's boosted to 6-1, plus 600 if you want to get on it. All right, Kenny Wiebe's coming up next. Cheers to the Bombers tonight and the upcoming weekend from Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right. I do want to thank the gang at Wallace & Wallace for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. They are the fencing and overhead door specialists in Winnipeg since 1946. Folks, if your property needs the protection and security of a new fence, or if winter did a number on your old one, hit them up because they've got you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And hey, if it's time to replace your garage door, they also feature Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. Best way to go about it is give them a call at 204-452-2700. Let them know what you're looking for. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate at your property. And you can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent just off of Kenniston. And guys, with wedding season upon us, if you're looking into your closet and realize that you need to up your menswear game, get on over to F Apparel at 190 Smith Street. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and the biggest and best selection of menswear accessories around. If you're in a wedding party or having a wedding, make sure to talk to them about a 15% discount when the wedding party gets their suits at F Apparel. And they've also got a great June special for 2024 high school grads. F Apparel's at 190 Smith Street downtown. You can make an appointment at F, that's EPHapparel.com. And I know they'll be gathered around the tube tonight at Aikens Lake watching the game. The fishing season is back in full swing, and Aikens is going full force right now. I can't wait to get there later on this summer. If you are thinking about an amazing fly-in fishing opportunity that you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens Lake is the spot. Perfect for getaways, corporate outings as well. If you've been spending the last couple of years on Zoom, nothing like that time in the boat. Find out more at aikenslake.com on options as well as availability for the rest of the 2024 fishing season. All right, it is time for all of us to wake up collectively because Kenny Wiebe is back from the Winnipeg Free Press. Kenneth, how goes it? How is the Grey Owl? Oh, wait, we've got you muted here. Hold on a sec. We got to get you on here. Is that on our end, Reem?
1 sec. I'll change his thing. I think it should be good now if he accepts. I have it on Samson. I have it on the Samson. It was selected on his iPhone. Ken, you there? I think you should be.
Yes, I am.
There we go.
Oh, my goodness. Technical difficulties. What a surprise on my end. Sorry about that, fellas.
All good.
Just out here doing our best.
How was the Grey Owl? I see you've got that Clear Lake golf shirt on.
Yeah. It was a great few days. Not a great opening round. The combination of my misses and a 40K wind, not overly good, but managed to shave 10 strokes off on the second round and clawed my way up to 9th in the 4th flight, Huss. So not all was lost, but lots of laughs and great showing. They had almost 270 golfers up there, so it was a great couple of days. And I also had a chance to play Minnedosa on Saturday. In between rounds, they'll be hosting the Women's Am and the Mid-Am on the Golf Manitoba calendar. So a fun track up there as well.
Yeah, I've heard that's a nice track out in Minnedosa. And
it was my first time.
I mean, I've never played it. I remember Knuckles would always go there. I knew Andrew Collier from the Gold Eyes would always head out there. I mean, it seems like a really cool event that obviously brings people back each and every year.
Yeah, it's a cool event for sure. Lots of laughs. Lots of hockey fans up there. Lots of questions. Lots of opinions flying around. But yeah, it was great fun. Weather was mostly good. It's been a little bit wet, but overall we've been pretty lucky. And yeah, I mean the folks, the volunteers and the organizers did a great job. The course was looking really good, and just always fun to be out. 4 days in a row on the golf course, Huss, before the summer has arrived, is always welcome.
Yeah, well, especially considering how much damn rain we've had as of late. So nice to get those rounds in, and we'll look forward to get you back out on the course. Had a great time.
Yes, sir. Nice lid, by the way. Nice lid. Yes, I noticed that.
Shout out to our friend Corey over at Breezy Bend, was over there on Tuesday, I guess. Course looking great. I mean, obviously it's looking great with the amount of moisture. Just down a few rounds this year because of the amount of times that it's been pouring. Listen, I want to get to the Jets with you, but just before we do that, because that might sort of stretch into when we have to go. quick thought on the Cup final. Game 3 tonight, do or die for the Oilers in their situation that they're in. What have you thought of the first 2 games?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Edmonton came out really strong in Game 1 on Saturday, but just couldn't solve the Bobrovsky puzzle. And Game 2, Florida kind of got back on brand a little bit more, a little bit stingier defensively, and the Oilers didn't generate nearly as much and just sprung a couple of leaks defensively, overall. But obviously this one's massive. Oilers, I mean, again, Mattias Ekholm's been great in the series, but Mattias Ekholm can't be your only goal scorer through 2 games, if you want to win a series. So Leon Draisaitl needs to be better. I think he was a little bit fortunate. Yes, good news for everyone that Barkov is not injured and he's able to play in Game 3. Draisaitl hasn't been as effective as we're used to seeing. The secondary scoring hasn't been there. Connor McDavid is generating, but the power play has gone a little bit quiet. I mean, this is why we always talk about the importance of special teams, but when your special teams goes quiet, even when you are operating at that 35% rate, you need your 5-on-5 scoring to come through for you. And so far, that has not been the case for the Oilers. Obviously, they're going to try to get McDavid away from Barkov having the last change. I think we could see some more power hour shifts with Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid being used together. Some lineup questions for today. Sounds like coming out of the skate. I mean, there's a possibility that given Darnell Nurse's situation, they could go 7D and 11 forwards. With the 2-day break in between games, you can expect Connor McDavid to be north of 25 minutes. So I could see that being a possibility. Also sounds like Derek Ryan will be in for the Oilers as well, for sure. And then there's a possibility Corey Perry might return. And obviously we know Evander Kane has been banged up in this series, gone 9 games without a goal, and his status a little bit up in the air right now, which is why I think they could go with that 11-7 scenario this evening.
2 is nasty. I mean, and listen, Florida is more than happy to play that way. But I mean, you saw the Oilers. I mean, McDavid giving that shot to Tkachuk. I think McDavid, if you're ever going to complain about star treatment, that might have been the spot, because I'm pretty sure that if it was anyone other than Connor McDavid and the amount of crap that he takes from guys like Tkachuk, he's maybe getting 2 minutes. I mean, the spear in the nuts, or the stick in the nuts of Dmitry Kulikov was bad. But are you of the opinion that the Oilers and Leon Draisaitl are lucky that he is eligible to play in tonight's game, considering that hit on Barkov? Where'd you come out on that?
Yeah, a couple things, Huss. Leaving your feet, A, not great. B, whether it's forearm shiver or straight elbow to the jaw, also not great. I think you could have called it either way. I mean, you could have called it a major in a game. I don't think a suspension was necessarily necessary, but I do think that, I mean, again, if he's hurt, he's definitely suspended, right? So, which is why we always get into the debate about intent versus result, which again, I think maybe might have been a factor on the Foegele situation. I'm totally fine. I know a lot of people didn't agree. I'm totally fine with that being a major. But I do agree, didn't necessarily, change the path of the leg. But at the same time, I mean, people thinking Louis Dorainen was diving. I mean, the guy got knocked out of the series last year because he had a blown out knee. Like, that's not a good play by Foegele. Do I think there was malicious intent? No, of course not. But as a play, you're trying to get out of the game. And also forearm shivers and elbows to the head, you're also trying to get out of the game. I mean, we know it's the case. Then the league needs Leon Draisaitl in the series, especially with the Oilers being down 2-0. I also think it's good for the series that both guys are going to be playing. That's excellent. And, again, are they still a little bit lucky? Yes, I do think to a degree they are a little bit fortunate he is going to be in the lineup. But again, Huss, this is a guy with zero track record of malicious play or dirty play. So
that reminds me of Mark Scheifele.
Fair, but Leon Draisaitl didn't travel 200 feet down the ice, and I don't see. I see some things in the chat. I see Turd Ferguson chiming in. The difference was 200 feet traveled versus about 5 feet traveled. And again, Scheifele's hit was shoulder to chest at the beginning. Yeah, I get that, but it was definitely charging. Leon's was not charging. It could have been elbowing or whatever you want to call it.
Listen,
those are not the same. Those hits are not the same. I'm sorry. They're not the same.
I guess my point is that it just triggers me a little bit that we see so many things let go. And like, now that we've had a bunch of time and a bunch of playoff runs, I don't think at any point has NHL player safety come down with a more iron fist than they did to Mark Scheifele in that Montreal series. And like we said now, all right, if that's the standard and that's the way they're going, that's the way they're going. But they never followed it up. And it's hard not to think that they maybe got the raw
Have
end.
you seen a hit like that since? That where a guy traveled from his own goal line to the other end of the ice and a hit being... There hasn't been a hit like it since.
No, but it was just such like those things never happened in the regular season either. I mean, it was a strange coincidence of the way that the play went, the puck behind the net, the empty net, him coming around, all of that coming in.
I think that the suspension could have been half as long. But again, like the whispers were that, the meeting didn't go particularly well. Like the hit itself was, I think the let's just put it this way. I think the suspension was compounded by the meeting with player safety, and that's how it got added up to 4. Now, again,
what did they just go in there and say? Yeah, we can't relitigate this, as Derek
we're not in the
just
meeting.
Says.
We're not in the meeting, but again,
it does seem to stand out though, and maybe that's just a Winnipeg
perspective.
No,
it's 4 games. You haven't seen anything since.
Show.
And that's the other crazy part. Last year, Pietrangelo on Draisaitl, full baseball chop, and that was 1 game, right? So, like, there's no doubt there was intent with that action. Like, we can debate all we want about Scheifele's intent. There was definite intent by Pietrangelo, and he's lucky that Leon didn't break his arm. Otherwise, he probably should have been out of that series.
No doubt.
Hey, one quick thing before we just now that I mentioned Pietrangelo, I watched that entire Avail this morning with Alexander Steen. So great local connection with the Winnipegger being named general manager in waiting with the Blues.
Yeah,
really
people in on the way that
Huss.
this works out, because we were actually going to talk about this later on, but we may as well get to it right now. Alex Steen, it will be the GM of the St. Louis Blues, but not yet. It's a very unique transition plan laid out officially today by St. Louis. Yeah,
so for those who were not familiar, so Doug Armstrong will be the GM for the next 2 seasons, and then will be shuffled up to president of hockey ops, and he signed a 3-year extension. Alex Steen will be a special assistant to the general manager, and we're not talking about George Costanza's special assistant to the general manager. We're talking about decision-making, being very heavily involved, and at the end, starting, I think, at the end of the 25-26 season, it will be the David Poile to Barry Trotz handoff, and then Alex Steen will take over full-fledged general manager of the Blues and still have Doug Armstrong, in the organization to assist with decisions. But, he'll be the general manager and the buck will stop with him. And it's an excellent choice, Huss. And a couple things I want to get into here. Alex is always one of the most articulate and insightful players. And when the Blues had Paul Stastny and Alex Steen at the same time in the same room, man, what an incredible room to talk hockey with. This is a guy who's grown up around the game, loves the game a great deal, but just needs the experience. He's always had a great mind for the game, always been interested in the why and how teams are set up. And I mean, everything, the discussion today, Tom Stillman, the owner, was just blown away by the passion of Alex Steen, his ability to want to learn, and his ability, his connection to the city and the community. And Huss, I also wanted to say too, Huss, how much have you seen? I mean, we talked a lot in this last month or two about the importance or the debate about hiring internally. Do you hear a lot of people in St. Louis complaining that the Blues have gone out and given a guy in Alex Steen who won a Stanley Cup in 2019? Are they up in arms about him being brought into the organization? Not that I've seen. And this is an incredibly smart hire by the St. Louis Blues, but it just makes me laugh because of the discourse we've seen about how True North is being ripped for, in some corners of the universe about hiring Scott O'Neill, whereas Alex Steen, with 0 experience outside of working on the amateur side or with the player development side in the last year, is going to be a general manager essentially within 4 or 5 years of retiring. So this is what smart organizations do when they have bright people on the inside. Anyways, just sorry about that rant. I just wanted to also tip your cap. I mean, Alex is a guy I always loved talking to when he was in the NHL. And again, I think that he'll throw himself into the job. He's moving back from Sweden to St. Louis. And again, he wants to be part of the community, and he will be part of the community and the organization moving forward.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, listen, Alex has always been really great to us. Obviously has great ties to Winnipeg, and I'm interested to see. Don't necessarily wish him a ton of success with the Blues in the division, but certainly personally, I hope that he does. Let's get to the Jets right now.
Sure.
What have you made of the listen, a lot of these reports on Ehlers, especially the ones from Drager, which we know are almost here you go. I mean, that like the pipeline is tight between he and Kevin Cheveldayoff, and I think a lot of those things are things the Winnipeg Jets are interested to get out. Not a front burner issue. Definitely listening. We played Arnie with Frank Saravelli yesterday, who I believe his quote is, "I want him. I need him." A big fan of Ehlers. Where are you at on Ehlers' future right now, and how realistic significant trade talks might pick up as we get closer to the 1st of July when he will officially enter the final year of his contract here in the Peg?
Yeah, so I got a column coming up on this in the pages in the online version of the WinnipegFreePress.com here coming up. And this is simple for me. Not a lot has changed. What I think we're seeing here as, various reports are coming out. I think it's fair to say A plus B equals C in this situation, that if the Jets had had an offer that was the, blow you away variety, potentially then, maybe the trade winds could be blowing. But I mean, history has shown us for a long, long time that if the Jets aren't going to get an offer that they consider to be considerable, they're not going to move them. I mean, at least not at the beginning. I mean, there is no impetus for the Jets to move Nikolai Ehlers at this moment unless they get a package that will A, change the construction of their back end, or B, change the construction of the top 6 forward group, or allow them to jump back into the first round or highly into the second round. So I don't think the Jets are in a hurry to move Nikolai Ehlers. And the fact that Arniel feels so strongly about him as a player and wasn't afraid to share that publicly would tell you that they might be willing to roll the dice, keep Nikolai Ehlers and show him that they want him to be either, I know Scott used the term top 6, but the only way you're convincing Nikolai Ehlers to stick around is if A and B, he's either on the top line or getting top line minutes and probably part of the top power play unit. Without both of those scenarios, it's hard to imagine a situation where Nikolai Ehlers says, yes, sign me up for 6 or 7 more, right? I mean, these are just the facts. He averaged just under 16 minutes last year. As productive as Nikolai Ehlers has been, 25 goals, 61 points last year, only 7 points at even strength, all assists, no goals. Like you can't become a 35 goal scorer and an 80-point producer when you're playing 16 minutes a game on most teams, especially for a team that was in the middle of the road in terms of offensive production last year. So again, what we heard from Darrin Drager, that Nikolai Ehlers is totally fine, riding out the contract. Of course he is. He's going to make $6 million next year, no matter where he plays. He's going to be given top 6 minutes, whether that's with the Jets or the team that he may be traded to. But if I'm Nikolai Ehlers, I'm not signing an extension with any team until I become a 30-plus goal scorer and an 80-point producer, because that's how I'm getting a raise from $6 million that I'm making annually, right? Outside of that, why would you sign an extension?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he was traded at some team.
Oh, it's totally,
what says, hey, listen, we believe in you, and here is 7.5, or here's 8, and this is what it is, and take it now, or we move in a different direction. I mean, he's definitely deserving it. I mean, you look at him, he's never hit 30, but I mean, he's got 25, 3 times.
7-time 20-goal guy, 7 times.
29. I mean, he's pretty much automatic on that. And your point about, how much he's been on the ice is particularly apt when talking about last season. Do you think, and again, obviously we're going to hear a lot of positive things from any new coach, but do you think Ehlers' situation changes at all with the Winnipeg Jets if he's back in training camp going into this season with Scott Arniel as the head coach, considering Kyle Connor's still here on the Jets?
Well, Huss, I mean, the thing we have to look at, and I think it gets overlooked because of the injury that Nikolai Ehlers suffered in Game 3 2 years, or in Game 2 2 years ago. Huss, when Rick Bowness came to training camp, in Banff, the line was Ehlers, Scheifele, and Connor 2 years ago. So
it's a great 5 periods.
To think that they didn't want to consider it is lunacy. The fact, again, I understand they should have used it more or could have used it more. I totally get that. But It's not like this idea has never been broached with the Winnipeg Jets. It just hasn't stuck, right? So could it be happening with Scott O'Neill? Sure. We also heard fans clamoring for Ehlers, Scheifele, and Velarde again, right? Because of the 1 month that they had together. So it's impossible to know what they're looking to do until they start doing it. I've told you this, Huss, for the last month or 6 weeks' time. There are still 3 outcomes for Nikolai Ehlers that are on the table. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion he gets traded. And for the people who say, well, you got to move the asset, it's going into the last year of the deal. Teams that are trying to win don't necessarily operate that way. The Carolina Hurricanes have 12 free agents, many of them unrestricted. And they got bounced when they got bounced, right? Second round. So, and again, we always talk about this. For people to say the Jets are going to lose Nikolai Ehlers for nothing, that's not accurate. If Nikolai Ehlers plays this year, he gave them 10 seasons, almost all of which were productive. Now, you can argue the other side that they maybe could trade for futures, but the Jets aren't looking at futures. They're trying to win now. They were 4th in the NHL this year, tied with the Florida Panthers. Now, again, they need to exercise their playoff demons. That's true. But I don't think the Jets are in a position where they're thinking, let's just put it this way. I don't think this is a Jacob Trouba situation. Now, again, I know that was a little bit different, but the scenarios. But going into the last year does not mean automatic trade. We saw it with, look no further than Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon, who were probably the second and third best defensemen on the NHL or on the Jets last year. Now, you could argue that if the Jets lose those 2 players in the offseason, well, now you can make your argument because they went out in the first round. But at the time, Huss, at the deadline, I did not hear one person saying the Jets should trade should be trading Brendan Dillon or Dylan DeMello. And nor will they be saying that about Ehlers if the Jets are in a playoff spot at the deadline. Now, is there a risk involved with that? Of course there is. But no bigger risk than trying to replace a guy that's an automatic 20-goal guy that might be a 35 or 40-goal guy. So unless there is a deal to be had that makes sense in the present and the future, Nikolai Ehlers will be with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, do I think that's a guarantee? Of course not. Some team, Huss, if there's a team that thinks that they can sign him long-term and can make him a top-line player, they better make their best offer to get him. Otherwise, the Jets are keeping him. Ask Evander Kane's representation how that works. And Nikolai Ehlers isn't like Evander Kane, where he asked for a trade 3 or 4 years in a row before he got dealt.
As they say, I mean, this Ehlers conversation, I don't anticipate anything imminent. I'm sure when we're down in Vegas, things might pick up and we'll hear a few things about who's talking about it. Much like the Carolina Hurricanes with Martin Necas right now, who the Jets have been reportedly interested in for obvious reasons. 25, RFA, right shot center, very productive player, 3 years younger than Ehlers. So we'll have time for all of that. The other
let's touch on Necas quickly, Huss.
Sure.
Necas, really intriguing player. But if you're the thing with, let's not forget the reason why he might be available at all. He wants a bigger role and responsibility, and he wants more money, right? He probably wants more money than Ehlers is currently making. If you're the Jets,
he'll get it.
You think he's getting it from? Do you think he'll get it from the Jets?
Would the Jets sign Necas for more than $6 million? Absolutely.
Well, how much higher would you go? Would you pay him more than Kyle Connor's making right now? I wouldn't.
I'm not sure that his number. It all depends on how long. I mean, the cap is going up. I mean, a contract right now is not the same. When was Kyle Connor signed? 4 years ago? 5 years ago? I mean, it's apples and oranges.
I get all that, Huss. I'm just saying that we knew for a long time Blake Wheeler's number was the ceiling, and I just don't see a scenario where the Jets are going to be comfortable paying someone like Marty Necas, who's not even, and he's an established NHL player, but he's not a point per game guy. I just don't see the Jets being comfortable going at or near where Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck are next year. I just don't. So I would think that's why they probably
8-5. Well, I mean 8-5. Yeah.
I mean, from 6 to 8-5 is not a big jump, is all I'm saying.
Well, it's 40%.
No,
I mean,
sure. I'm just saying that the players know the cap is going up, and I can see his representation wanting north of 7. So whether that's 7 or 8, I'm not sure. I'm just saying that
I feel a lot better about paying a 25-year-old player that than I would, a 29 or 30-year-old. That's not a comment on the Scheifele extension. I mean, I think that was great business for the Winnipeg Jets, as was Hellebuck. But I mean, moving forward, and I mean, I realize that it's great to say, oh, at this point, this is our highest paid guy. We didn't want to go over. Listen, you have the resources. You know what the cap is. You're trying to make your team as good as possible. And if you're bringing in a quality piece that you think can be a cornerstone for the duration of the contract in your top 6, and you have to pay more than what some guy signed 4 years ago, I mean, you just have to do that. Like, I understand trying to have the hierarchy of your team based around particular contracts, but there's also the reality of it. And the reality in the NHL right now is that it's not players on the other side of 30 that are generally getting those rewards for everything that they've done. It's the guys that are 25 years old, like Marty Nakach.
No, and there's a lot to like about him, but there are still warts and faults, right? I mean, for the same people that are down on Kyle Connor, I'm here to tell you, Marty Nakach is not making the Jets a better defensive hockey team. That's not his game. He's a highly skilled guy. Has been wildly inconsistent. There's a reason why Rod Brindamore has played him often on the third line, and it's not because he's a reliable defensive player. There are warts to his game. Now, again, incredibly skilled. He would bring speed. He has size, doesn't play a big, strong game. He's got size, though. Sure. But again, it's right now, Huss, I'm just going to put it this way. Would you be playing Marty Nakach ahead of Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, or Gabriel Velarde on the Jets' first power play next season?
Well, that's a really hard question to ask.
The only way he'd be on it is if Monahan is not there, right? I mean, that would be the only way he's on. That would be the only way he's on the top unit, and then you'd be playing him ahead of Cole Perfetti, which is possible.
Listen, if you're getting Martin Nakach, 100% Sean Monahan's not here. I mean, that just simply is impossible. And listen, let me quickly ask you about Monahan, because I know we've talked about that before. I don't know why I said to you earlier that I would be I don't think I'd be down with going longer than 3 years on a Monahan contract. And, we've kind of kicked this around a little bit this year. Looking more at the Jets center position with Scheifele, who's 31, with Adam Lowry is 31. Can you sign a player to 4 or potentially 5 years, or even 3 years, frankly, that is also going to be on the other side of 30, looking ahead for the next number of seasons, both considering what you're going to have to pay, what that does to your position, and the ability for other younger players, cheaper players, especially on ELCs, coming in with an opportunity to maybe get into that spot?
No, Hassan, and then that's totally fair. But like the flip side of the equation is Sean Monahan likely to sign for 3 years? I mean, in a perfect world, would the Jets sign him for 3 years? Absolutely. Yes. Now, there's risk at 4 and above for sure. But if it means keeping the player that you value, I mean, just look at how much we talked about Monahan after he arrived, Huss. Like, let's go through the checklist. Jets were terrible in the faceoff circle until Sean Monahan arrived. Then he became their best faceoff guy. He's on the penalty kill. He sparked the power play when he and Velarde were both in the lineup, and he plays 5-on-5 valuable minutes on the second line. And oh, by the way, he's also on the ice in the last minute of games, whether you're leading or trailing, right? I mean, how many players are you going to find like that, Huss, that are in their mid-20s and available right now in free agency or trade? Not very many. And I would also put it this way. We talked a lot about Paul Stastny because the comparable makes sense. Paul Stastny was the best deadline acquisition for the Jets. Jets brought him back at 34 after they couldn't keep him at 29 or 30. So Monahan will be 30 right now. I mean, you might have to go to the 4th year, whether you like it or not. And Huss, the other thing too, is that if Brad Lambert ultimately pushes him aside in year 3 or 4, Monahan's a capable winger that can also take draws. So I do think it would be worth going to the 4th year for, unless you can find a younger player. And again, Huss, we were just talking about this. If Marty Nakach is costing you north of 7 and Sean Monahan is costing you 5 or less, I mean, outside of the age difference, if you're trying to win now, I mean, are you not just as well off if you're taking the established player rather than the guy with the high ceiling, but the guy whose floor you're not sure about?
Well, I think we also have to talk about the risk involved in Monahan.
Oh, there's total risk.
Like,
yes,
Sean
for
Monahan
sure.
hasn't scored over 13 goals since 1920.
No,
and a
last
huge
year,
part of that is that he
last
hasn't
year.
been playing. We had 13 goals. Okay, I guess he had 13 with the Jets and 13 with Montreal. I shouldn't say that. I'm looking
almost
at this
30.
wrong. Yeah, 26 in total. But before that, 6 in 25, 8 in 65. Now, I'm not sitting here saying this guy's an accident waiting to happen. But again, when you're signing a guy that's going to be 30 years old on the first day of the regular season for extended years, like term, that has had the issues, that comes with a major risk involved as well. And listen, are they even considering this if they have a guy that they know they can just automatically fit right in? Probably not. They maybe don't even make that trade last year to begin with because they didn't have the need. I agree that the need is there. I just do wonder
and he
whether...
wants to be here, Huss. That's the other thing. A guy who's played in the Canadian market, good leader, fits in seamlessly, a guy that the head coach can rely on. I'm just saying there's value to him, but of course there's risk given the injury history. No doubt.
Okay, well, let me just hit you with this because obviously you're high on Monahan and said that he wants to be here. Let's just get a quick, what is today, June 12th? June 13th, probability poll from Ken Wiebe, percentage likelihood in your mind of re-signing with the Winnipeg Jets for Monahan, Brendan Dillon, Dylan DeMello.
I'm still, even though I think he is comfortable here, I think if the Jets don't get him signed before July 1st, I think there's teams like Columbus that would be interested in a reunion with Johnny Hockey. I'm going to say 40% on Monahan, even though, again, I'd be tempted to go 50, but I'm going to say 40 right now. For DeMello, I'm going to say 60%. And Brendan Dillon, I'm going to go 42.5%. No, sorry.
42.5.
I'm going to go 40%.
Okay, and it's funny because the Dillon and DeMello numbers add up to 100. Are you confident that one of those two will be Jets on July 1st?
Well, I was confident a while ago, Huss. Now that they're getting inching closer to July 1st, I'm not sure I would use the word confident. I would put it this way. I would be surprised if one of them was not back. I wouldn't be shocked, but I would be surprised. And the only reason I wouldn't be shocked is because it's gone this late. And yes, we understand the Jets had other priorities first. They wanted to be sure what the cap number was. They know what the cap number is, which makes me believe they will be going hardcore to get at least one. And we've talked about this before. I think that Brendan Dillon brings a couple of additional characteristics the Jets don't have an abundance of in their organization. But Dylan DeMello is a bit younger, and the right side is right now the weaker side. Even though there are, yes, some capable players that can move over from the left and play the right-hand side. And we know that once Elias Solomonson gets over here and is eventually an NHLer, the right side is getting better. But for the same reason we're talking about Sean Monahan, you would have to think about Dylan DeMello because right now he is the top pairing guy on the right-hand side for an organization that is thin on the right side. So I'm going to favor him a little bit more slightly to Dylan, even though I've said it for months. In a perfect world, they would like to have both of them back. I just don't think that the money adds up, and I think that a guy like Brendan Dillon is going to cash in because of not only the way he played himself, but the way that a guy like Nikita Zadorov played in the playoffs. A team that doesn't get Zadorov and is comfortable playing big dollars for him and doesn't get him, they're going to shift their focus to a guy like Brendan Dillon. I mean, it's that simple, Huss. I mean, tall trees in the playoffs, lots of big guys in the postseason that are getting it done on the back end. So
no doubt about it.
Anyways, lots to think about. I mean, and again, things could change with one phone call. We know that, but right now, if you're a player, Huss, and you've waited this long, you owe it to yourself to listen to what else is out there, even if you want to come back to Winnipeg. Would be how I view it from that side of things.
Hey, Pagnotta's jumping on in just a minute. We're going to talk to him with him, but just a minute or less if you can. Just a quick thoughts on Line A and how difficult it might be for the Blue Jackets to get return and move 8-7 on the cap for 2 more seasons, considering the struggles that he's had.
Yeah, I mean, I hope first and foremost that Patrick, during his time in the program and away from the game, has rekindled the passion and the joy for the game. Because let's face it, Huss, few people love the game as much as Patrick and take as much joy from it, even in the hockey is hard times. Hopefully, he's in a good place. Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to have retention, or you're not getting much of a return because you don't know what you're getting back. When Patrick Laine has been healthy, Huss, still a productive player. I mean, not at the same levels he was here in Winnipeg when he was historical goal scorer at his age at 18 and 19, but still a guy that can provide some value. And like we've been talking about Ehlers, goal scoring currency is key. So I hope he goes to a place where he is comfortable and is put in a position to succeed. And I hope that he finds his passion for the game again. That's the biggest thing for me. Do I think it's going to be a reunion with the Jets as much as we'd enjoy it as media people, Huss? I don't see that as a possibility. I mean, maybe when the contract is expired, you might look at a return, but right now I don't see it. And then last thing, Huss, on the coaching search, I think it's, we thought it would be something where the Jets were trying to get ahead in the positioning. I would say that right now they're probably waiting to see a couple guys who are still involved in whether it's in the playoffs or considering other positions. Jay Leach getting hired with Boston, I think, is an interesting one. To me, I don't know if Scott Arniel talked to him or not, but makes sense for him to go back to the Bruins organization. But I would have thought that he would be someone who would have been under consideration to run the defense here. I still think Mark Stewart is an interesting candidate, I don't know his contract situation in Edmonton, but we know there's obvious connections to the community here, both on and off the ice for Mark. And still curious, obviously, about Todd Nelson. And Huss, the reason we talked about Todd for a long time, I mean, they won in Game 7 after being up 3-0. Yeah. But the thing is, Huss, we've been around the American League a long time. You go from the red-hot candidate, all of a sudden, if Hershey loses in Game 7, I mean, what does that do for your status? I mean, it doesn't change what kind of coach Todd is, but I mean, you go up 3-0 to losing a series. I mean, that's also on the resume, right? And I'm not sure if Todd's ready to leave Hershey, but I do think there's probably got to be a conversation between him and Scott Arniel at some point here.
He dodged that bullet, and I can't believe how late the Calder Cup playoffs are going. I mean, it is crazy that series just ended last night, and we were talking about how late
starting tomorrow.
Well, they get right back to it. Dude, great stuff. Hit them straight. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
You as well, man. Thanks for having me as always, and have a good chat with Pags here. Talk to you soon, my man. Let's get out soon.
Pagnotta of the fourth period coming up in just a minute. Before Dave joins us, don't forget, gang, a big Bomber game tonight, and we'll be back at Princess Auto Stadium 8 days from now, the kickoff to summer, June 21st, BC Lions. Make sure to include in your game day plans getting out early to the Princess Auto tailgate area, $3.50 poppin' hot dogs, $5 beers, great entertainment, inflatables for the kids, and more. And in addition to that, make plans to get back to Princess Auto Stadium on July 1st for the big Canada Day celebrations, starting off at noon, completely free for the entire family. They'll have food trucks, inflatables, activities, and games all day long. Main stage performances beginning at 3 p.m. Headliners, Sam Roberts Band, Doc Walker, fireworks at dusk. Again, all completely free. So mark down on your calendar, celebrate Canada with Princess Auto and the Bombers on July 1st. And of course, you can make a trip down to Princess Auto this weekend on Panet Road or Portage Avenue West for all of your needs and the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. And you can shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Going to be gorgeous tonight and tomorrow, and that means a great time before some rain comes to get down to the Beer Can, Winnipeg's best outdoor bar, beer garden, if you will, with the best selection of local beers and amazing food cooked up by the Cosmos Boys. Beer Can open every day at noon until midnight. Make a point of getting down there. And as I say, food at the Beer Can, great by the Cosmos guys. Don't forget to maybe get a Hoagie Boys trip in before the game tonight. 7 p.m. They're open till down on South Osborne. Big tent sale coming up at Royal Sports this weekend. 50% off everything under the tent and more. Thousands of pairs of shoes, merchandise. There really is nothing like a Royal tent sale. They're banging out more stock. So get down there Saturday and Sunday beginning at 10 a.m. at 750 Pembina Highway. Find out more on the tent sale with everything they're throwing out on their Instagram feed at Royal Sports Winnipeg. And hey, I mentioned this right off the top, but a busy night tonight with the Bombers playing at 6:30, Cup final just after 7. You got to be down at your local Boston Pizza so you can watch both. The playoff menu is in full effect. The wing flights, the Sicilian square footer pizza, the jalapeno popper dip, a few ice-cold schooners potentially on the menu as well, and 2 great games. Of course, if you are staying at home tonight, you can get it hot and fast to your door by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's get out to Edmonton and welcome in Dave Pagnotta from the 4th period. Pags, it's great to have you back on the program. How was your travel from South Florida to Edmonton? I was talking with DB. He just did a quick stopover in LA.
He went home. He went home to LA the day after game 2, and then took a nice direct flight straight to Edmonton yesterday. I did not. I took a good 30 minutes. This guy right here got there no problem.
Brains and beauty, Hustler. I got the brains, he got the beauty.
I don't know about that, but it was tough. I had a 9 a.m. flight or 11 a.m. flight, excuse me. Got to the airport at 9. I got to Edmonton yesterday at noon. So it was a nice little trip.
Where did you sleep?
So I ended up in Calgary. So I spent the night in Calgary, got there about midnight, and then, moseyed my way up here yesterday. Fun times.
Now the Cup can begin because you're here and the Panthers are there as well.
Yes, they made it too.
What was the story with the Panthers spending the extra day? Is it just totally up to the teams to fly as they want during the series? It did sort of seem weird that with the extra, usually you want the teams there, all the media are there, and the Panthers didn't get until late last night.
Yeah, no, they booked it. They scheduled it. They wanted to leave the day before. And when you looked at the forecast a week ago, it looked fine. It didn't look like there was going to be big storms coming into South Florida that derailed a crap ton of people's travels, including the Panthers. There's only a handful of South Florida locals media that are here. There's most of them missed their flights. They got pushed back another 24 hours, 48 hours. They wouldn't have made the game anyway. So I think there's only just a handful of media from Fort Lauderdale, Sunrise, Miami, and all that are actually here. So if you got out before 9 a.m., you made it on the day, whatever day after game 2 was. But the Panthers scheduled it. They wanted to leave the day before the game, but they didn't anticipate all the storm coming in, and they seemed fine today. They said the travel didn't really bother them. So they're zeroed in for the game tonight.
Well, they're feeling good. It's the Oilers that have the real stress coming up tonight, facing a 2-0 elimination, a 2-0 series deficit. Listen, I want to get to some of the other stories around the league, but just quickly, you've been at the games following and covering it for the 4th period. What do you made of this series through 2 games and the Oilers' predicament tonight in front of their home crowd?
Game 2 was a stinker on the Oilers' part. The Florida Panthers just totally dominated them, and you know what? I'm still of the belief that they toyed with Edmonton in game 1, and fortunate. They were in a fortunate position to be up 2-0 early in the second period. So between that and how Bobrovsky was playing, they kind of allowed Edmonton to just kind of go show us what you got. For the rest of that period and part of the third, and then things started to change a little bit. But it was as if Florida was just kind of learning Edmonton's tendencies to then potentially use that against them games 2, 3, 4, and on, 4 and on and whatnot. So as good as Edmonton performed in game 1, I think it was also clever performance by Florida's side of things to try to kind of learn what Edmonton is all about and what they're going to bring them on a regular basis. I'm expecting a different kind of outing tonight. I'm expecting the Oilers to go hard tonight, especially Stanley Cup Final in front of your home fans for the first time in a heck of a long time since 2006. So there's a lot riding on the game tonight. I think there's a lot of energy. They're excited for it. The fans, the city is already buzzing. So I think we see a different type of performance by Edmonton tonight. I think they squeeze it out, but I don't know how much more they have after that.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I mean, I didn't think this would be a short series, but it will be if they don't win tonight. So
yeah.
We'll see what McDavid has. Just quickly, as far as the lineups go, great news for the Panthers. Barkov is a go. He'll be playing. What are you hearing about Evander Kane?
There's a decent chance that he's out. He said it. He's battling a sports hernia. So normally you don't really reveal this kind of stuff during the playoffs, especially in the Cup final. But he let it be known right before the final got underway that he's battling that. So there's a chance he doesn't make the lineup tonight. But Chris Knobloch was very non-committal about anything lineup-wise. He said you're just gonna have to wait for the pregame to figure it out. So whether Kane's in there or not, officially, we're not going to know until they hit the ice before this game. So whether it's him or Corey Perry or Fogle or Carrick, it's anybody's guess for the time being.
Dave Pagnotta of the fourth period joining us from the Cup final in Edmonton before Game 3 tonight. I think it's part of a byproduct of all the national media getting together. A lot of conversations behind the scenes. We're hearing more insider reports on potential players that could have new addresses. One name we've heard a lot about is Marty Necas in Carolina, 25 years old, coming off a real strong season. What will the ask be from the Hurricanes for Necas? And maybe more importantly to potential teams, what will the ask be from Necas and his representatives on a new contract?
So contract-wise, the belief around the league, talking to a bunch of teams, is if he goes full term, you're probably looking around the $7 million range on an AAV. That seemed to be the consensus. Ballpark 7.5. That seemed to be the consensus talking to some other GMs and other team reps around the league. It certainly seems like he's going to get traded. It looks like the writing is on the wall. They were telling the Hurricanes got caught in a bit of a lie, which kind of sucks for them, but oh well, they shouldn't have done it. They were telling some teams that were interested, like Calgary and Philadelphia, for example, that they're going to try to sign him. They're holding off on trade chatter. Meanwhile, they were talking to a few other teams about potentially making a trade, and then eventually had to own up to it and say, we're just not interested in trading him to your team. So right now, Calgary, Philly, they're out. I think Vancouver is out as well. Montreal, maybe. But there are other teams that are obviously very interested in this player. The Jets have expressed interest. I'm not sure where that stands right now. But you also have Nashville. You have Anaheim, Columbus. Seattle is another one that's I heard from the get-go, the Kraken expressed interest in him. So it looks like he will be moved at some point. It's just hard to right now pinpoint whether that's today, this week, during the draft. We'll have to wait and see. But Carolina got a little bit of business done today. They signed Chatfield to a 3-year, $9 million extension. We know Jake Gensel's going to free agency. They're working on an extension. As we reported last week, they started talks with Jacob Slavin, and it looks like it's moving in the right direction. That can't be official until July 1, but we'll see. But there are some other bits of business that the Hurricanes have to address, whether it's Jordan Martinook, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, Teuvo Teravainen. There's a lot of players that they got to worry about here. It's not just Necas. So we'll see kind of what happens as these talks progress. And it's possible that if Tulsky and the crew and Dundon and everyone in Carolina move him, that they may bring in a piece on that back end to help substitute, I guess, the fact that they may end up losing one of, if not both, Pesce and Shea to free agency.
Let me ask you this, Dave. Nikolai Ehlers is a hot topic here in Winnipeg in his future. He's a big fan favorite. He scored 25 goals, none on the power play last year. Hasn't really been used in a top line role. What do you gauge around the league for the market for Ehlers? We've heard that Kevin Cheveldayoff has been fielding some calls and is open to talking about it. And I think you have to, considering, the fact that he's got 1 year left on his deal. I think often, we sort of obsess about players in our own market that maybe aren't getting talked about elsewhere. But, from your conversations with people in the league as well as around the media during the Cup week, what do you make in the market for Ehlers?
There's certainly a lot of teams that would love to get their hands on that caliber player. The guy that, can come in, provide secondary scoring, can play top power play minutes if needed. He can be interchanged between first line, second line, whatever type of deployment you're looking for. And he's got a pretty solid cap hit at $6 million. His salary is $6.75, but he's got a solid cap hit at $6 million. We know that they want, the Jets want to address their blue line. Whether they move Ehlers for a piece on the back end or not, obviously we have to wait and see, but they also want to address the forward core. There's a reason why they brought in Toffoli ahead of the deadline to add some more secondary scoring and extra punch to the lineup. If you move out Ehlers, you're going to have to continue to bring somebody else in. So Chevy's going to get a little creative on this one, I think. He could potentially move Ehlers out, collect, a first-round pick or something else, and then package that up for an asset elsewhere. If he does go the futures route, I think that would then be swapped out to bring in somebody immediate, whether it is a scorer or someone on the back end. But he's got a few different areas that he can cover here, Chevy can, with respect to making a move here. But everything we've been told is the primary reason they're exploring this is that he, for now, isn't interested in signing an extension with the club as early as July. So viewing this as his last year, collect what you can and kind of move on.
Dave, the other player that was quite close to Nikolai Ehlers back in the day that we started hearing a lot about yesterday is Patrik Laine, who, of course, finished the second half of the season and still is technically in the NHL Player Assistance Program. Yeah. What can you tell us about where Columbus is at, where the Laine camp is at, and if they do go the trade route, how difficult will it be for Don Waddell in Seabus to move a player with everything surrounding him in the past couple seasons, knowing that the bill is 8-7 for the next 2 years?
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. I think in moving Laine is the fact that, he has an $8.7 million cap hit. Now, it means one of two things. It's either Columbus is going to have to eat a chunk of that deal, or they're going to have to take back either the same sum or close to it with respect to that 8.7 from another team. May even be a combination. Take back a $4 million player, eat another 2 on his deal for the next 2 years. This is going to be a little bit complicated for Columbus. But as Pierre LeBrun reported correctly yesterday, that they've already had those discussions. Andy Scott, Laine's agent, and Waddell and the crew in Columbus have had that discussion already and are going to try to work together to facilitate a trade. So the agent has that opportunity to get engaged in some of those discussions to help make this happen, the sooner the better, I guess, for the player's perspective. But, we'll see, what obviously evolves here because this happened relatively recently. So we'll see, where things go. But the goal from both sides is to have Laine starting next season on a new team.
Dave, we got to give a shout out to DB because Dennis was on the program a few weeks ago and we were talking about Mitch Marner and he said, look out for the Vegas Golden Knights. And a lot of people are like, the Vegas Golden Knights, how can they pull it off? And then there's Elliot Friedman yesterday saying, watch out for the Vegas Golden Knights for Mitch Marner. What's the latest on the Leafs and the Marner situation and how likely is it that he will be in anything other than blue and white when the puck drops in October?
I think Toronto has made it known to a select group of teams that they would explore that possibility if those teams are interested. I think Vegas is certainly one of them. Add Nashville to the mix, Dallas, Chicago. Those are a couple other teams that I had heard that are right there as well. So we'll see if that kind of expands. I believe there may be a couple more, but those are the ones that we're aware of, the 4 teams right now. But they said, okay, go make a move and or excuse me, make us an offer, and then we'll go from there and see if he'll waive his no movement clause officially to make that happen. Mitch has been very adamant behind the scenes anyway, and he'll vocalize this when he can, that he wants to stay. His priority is to stay in Toronto. He loves it. He wants to stay. But look, if the team wants to move on, he's going to weigh those options. So it's now a matter of Brad Treliving finding a right deal that they like, and then going to Mitch and saying, all right, here's one of the teams that we know you would waive to. We've got a deal. Spend the night, sleep on it, and let us know. But I do think the wheels are at least in motion. They're not actively, they haven't, sent a memo to all 31 other teams saying, hey, we've got this guy available. Make us your best offer. Mitch isn't going to go anywhere. He's got that protection. But it's going to come down to where the Leafs feel they have the right move, and where that ends up being has to align with where Mitch would be comfortable signing off to go to.
Much, let's just say that he's like, yeah, okay, I'll take a trade, but I mean, I'm not signing an extension right off the bat, and a team's getting him for 1 year at just about $11 million a season. Like, is the benefit to the Leafs just moving the contract and having that cap space to go elsewhere? Can they expect significant return for a player that comes with that much of a ticket without any contract certainty moving forward?
I think the Leafs will try to maximize whatever the return is. So I do believe if it gets to that point where he is willing to waive, that they would then allow the team to negotiate an extension. Now, like Ehlers and Slavin and others that are entering the final year of their deal, they can't sign an extension until July 1. So either you make the move in advance and you have a handshake agreement and you then make it official on July 1, or you wait. We kind of have to see where that goes. The other factor here, and that this will also help in maximizing a return, is the Leafs have no problem paying his $7.25 million signing bonus July 1, which then, I mean, the only money is owed to Marner for the rest of the season will be $700 and whatever it is, $775 or whatever for the rest of the season. So from a monetary perspective, it may be something from a trade side that we don't see until July hits with respect to Mitch Marner. If it happens beforehand, then, I mean, either way, we're talking about a huge blockbuster type deal if it does come down the pipe, but we'll see kind of, where this goes. But the Leafs will try in any way to maximize a return. And if that means eating that bonus, and if that means allowing them to speak with Darren Ferris's agent to get an extension done, then I think the Leafs will do what they can to max this return.
David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Last one before we go. It's certainly not a team that's involved in the playoffs and hasn't been for a while, but they have a new home, Utah, the former Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah.
What do you hear? To me, they're the most interesting team going into the draft with all the draft capital, the new location, new ownership. What are you hearing about Utah, and what's intriguing to you about all of their options when it comes to revamping that roster, maybe bringing in a little bit more marquee talent, if you will, to kick things off in a great way in Salt Lake City?
They have money to burn, and Ryan Smith has let it known to his GM, Bill Armstrong, to spend it. So the defense is an area that they're going to prioritize and have prioritized in terms of upgrading.
They've got nobody signed for the next year.
No, exactly. They've got a couple restricted free agents. Sean Dursey will get his deal. Mosier and I think there's another one. Valimaki. No, he's the goalie. Anyway, they got somebody else in terms of restricted. So they have three controllable guys. But yeah, they want to solidify that back end. So Bill Armstrong's going to be aggressive in trying to bolster that blue line, get guys here with terms, sign free agents to long-term deals, and then also add up front. Like a lot of teams, I mean, it's basically top four and top six scorers. Like almost every team would love to add that. But Utah will now have the ability to pursue players and to spend the money on them the right way. So we'll see whatever they're going to end up being called, the Outlaws, the Yetis, the whatever. They're willing to spend, and they're starting to make it known to agents that they have money, and that if your client is interested in exploring this opportunity, this is somewhere that they should seriously consider.
Yeah, they got a ton of money, and they have got a ton of draft capital as well if they've got to use that to make some deals. We'll be paying close attention to Utah when we get to Vegas, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys in Vegas in a couple weeks when the league gets together and we hit up the Sphere. Enjoy the game tonight.
Thank you. Should be a good one.
Pat on the back and a kick in the ass if needed. And love you guys.
Every now and again it is.
We'll look forward to all your reporting. Just fill people in on the content you guys are cranking out during the Cup.
Yeah, we're going to be, continuing to do pregame and postgame analysis and wrap-ups on the fourth period. We're also going to be dishing out some additional off-season content, some of the trade chatter going on, contract signings, things like that. Our trade watch list, our summer trade watch list will be coming out later in the next few days. So we'll touch on that too. Plus, if you've got a Sirius XM subscription, Dennis and I do the pregame show for the Stanley Cup Final every hour right before the game. And tonight, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman will be joining us. So we'll have him. We'll touch base with him about Utah and a number of other topics, as well as the Stanley Cup Final. So we're looking forward to it.
Please ask him how he what kind of a time he had hanging out with DJ Khaled on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I saw that.
What a combination! That's one thing I never thought that I'd see, and I laughed my head off.
Yeah, no, that was an interesting one. I'll see what happens, because we've got Our Lady Peace is doing the pregame concert out here in Edmonton tonight. Saturday it's Shania Twain, so I'll see if Bettman tries to squeeze his way into one of those concerts.
Hey, and it's one other thing. How are the plans coming on? Will the fourth period be launching a fourth period version of Cap Friendly for fans to keep them in the game?
No, we're not smart enough. We'll keep those either to Puckpedia, or somebody's going to come up with something, because I'm definitely not. They told me there'd be no math, so somebody much smarter than me, if they can figure that out, will gladly give you all the props, because we're going to need the help after July 5th.
No doubt about it. Hey, thanks again, dude. Enjoy it, and keep up the great work. We'll see you in Vegas in a couple weeks.
You got it, buddy. Take care.
All right, there is Dave Pagnotta of The Fourth Period. Give them a follow on Twitter at The Fourth Period. And he did actually have there's a lot of great reporting coming up from there. They got a big piece on Alex Steen going over to the Blues as well, as we talked about with Ken a little earlier. But appreciate Dave and Dennis jumping on. And yes, if you do have Sirius XM, tune in to the fellas before the game tonight. All right, we've got a couple things to do before we finish up. And because shout out to the Gold Eyes, travel day today. They won their series in Kane County and are back at home beginning tomorrow. And as I look at the weather forecast, we're still waiting to get the rain out of the Tuesday forecast right now. Basically, looks like it's going to be kind of gloomy from about Saturday through till Tuesday. Hopefully that ends up early, because of course we will be looking forward to seeing all of you at the WST patio party at the Gold Eyes game next Tuesday. I believe there's a couple tickets left. Click on the link in the description or on the website, winnipegsportstalk.com. Grab those last couple seats if you want to join us. It should be a great time. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Mainly sunny, 25 degrees. Our pal Mike McIntyre throwing out the first pitch. It'll be a great night to get out to the ballpark to kick off a season-long 9-game homestand for the Fish. Of course, on Monday, we'll be back at the track with our picks. I did not have a good night last night. I need a little break for a couple days before getting back into our competition with Michael Remis, but lots going on. Lots going on weekends as well. Check the Assiniboia Downs website for things like that Western Canada Rib Fest. There's the night markets. Obviously, the X is coming up as well, but it's always free. It's always free parking at Assiniboia Downs, and it's always a great time. And we are going to be launching a couple of other dates at AS Downs with WST listeners later on in the season. All right, before we bring in Reem, I do want to get to a quick Breezy Bend golf report. And again, shout out to Corey for this beautiful hat. Lots of comments on the Bend hat today. Even Joaquin Gage in Edmonton was hitting me up in the lock shop wanting to get one of them. Appreciate that from Corey. Listen, our Breezy Bend golf report is all about the U.S. Open today. Patrick Cantlay The Turtle himself plotted around the course at 5 under par. Just an amazing round of Pinehurst number 2, considering how difficult the course is playing. Ludvig Åberg of Sweden, 1 shot back at 4 under par. Matthew Pavon of France, who kind of came out of nowhere to win a couple times earlier this year, he's at 3 under. My guy Tony Finau had a tough bogey on 18, but he still finished at 2 under par. And look, there's Rory McIlroy. He started off late. He is finishing up his front 9 right now on hole number 9. He is 2 under par right now, as is Tyrrell Hatton. Corey Connors of Canada, 1 under par. Sergio Garcia, 1 under par through their round. Tom Kim and Bryson DeChambeau on the course right now at 1 under, as is Harry Higgs, who actually is part of one of our head-to-head matchups. Colin Morikawa had a couple tough doubles and just tough luck, and that's going to happen. Rebounded very well. Birdies on the last 2 holes. He finished at even. Brooks Koepka was on the leaderboard at the top at 3 under. He sort of faded later. He's also at even par. Action continues throughout the afternoon. And again, huge shout out to Breezy Bend for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Give the clubhouse a call. Ask for Corey Johnson if you'd like more information on potentially making Breezy your long-term golfing home for you and your family, as well as discussing bookings for things like weddings. Absolutely beautiful facility, one of the best in the city if you're thinking about getting hitched. breezybend.ca for more information on Breezy Bend. All right, let's get Remo back in here. We're going to check out the lines for tonight's game. We did a special Winnipeg Sports Talk parlay for tonight. Fun show today, though. Well, obviously, we had to hit the Bomber game with the DB, and then a lot of hockey talk as we get going into the end of the Cup final and our trip to Vegas, also sponsored by our friends at Coolbet at the end of the month. It was fun with both Kenny and Pags for some off-season talk before the off-season technically begins.
Yeah, that's why I'm in such a good mood. We got the Cup final, this great matchup with the 2 best players, McDavid, Draisaitl. I mean, Florida's got great players too, but Canada's team, right? Us, the Edmonton Oilers, we got that. And the Bombers trying to get back in it. Don't want to go 0-2. And then we have the NHL offseason looming with a lot of trade rumors starting to come out. This is pretty awesome. And we haven't really talked a lot about Cap Friendly. We did have a bit of a scare last night because Cap Friendly, they got bought by the Washington Capitals. I think it was Sunday. And that was disappointing for hockey fans. I mean, how many times during a day do I check Cap Friendly? It drives a lot of conversations we have here. Some of our biggest content is speculation on roster moves. Well, if you want to do a roster move, what do you need to know? Everyone's salary. So once Cap Friendly is out of the picture after July of 5, thankfully we have Puckpedia. But then there was a tweet yesterday. The Blues have a major operations announcement coming, and then we thought, oh, are they buying Puckpedia too? It's like NHL teams finally realized that they needed their own internal system that keeps track of everyone's salaries. You can't just rely on Cap Friendly. And they finally realized, hey, we can just buy them. Why are we putting all this work in to build our own? And if we didn't have, we just started thinking about a world where we didn't have Cap Friendly, didn't have Puckpedia to keep track of all the salaries and contracts. How would we do our job? How would we have any conversation? So I'm curious, what's going to happen? What's the future of these, I don't want to say fan-made, but third-party websites that provide all this great information? So we should be sitting here thanking Cap Friendly, the work they're done, Cap Geek before that, and now Puckpedia for carrying the torch. Hopefully some NHL team doesn't come and buy it. We'll have to see what happens because it seems like teams, Elliot Friedman reported earlier this week on 32 Thoughts, some teams, he mentioned 8 teams or so, 9 teams that have their own systems, but a lot of teams did rely on Cap Friendly, and I think they license the technology, but they can't do that, and that was why Washington bought them. 1, because they didn't have their own internal stuff, and 2, to screw over the other teams, get a competitive advantage.
I mean, we watch people that deal within Major League Baseball, and they're like, how is this even a thing? This is all done centrally by MLB for the teams. Apparently not in the National Hockey League. And bottom line is, and I know Gary Bettman says different, it's complete BS. Fans, hockey fans, want to know They need to know. You can't have educated hockey conversations in 2024 about any potential moves in the National Hockey League without talking about players' contracts. That is just the facts. And I know there's been a resistance from the league on that topic, but the reality is, and all you need to know is how much of a topic this was around the hockey world, the Caps buying Cap Friendly, because of what that means for fans, for media, and apparently for other teams in the league. All right, let's get to the Coolbet lines for tonight. Again, buckle up, gang, because we are in Vegas 2 weeks from today. Actually, 2 weeks from yesterday. Brought to you by Coolbet, all of our NHL draft coverage. Can't thank them enough for their support of WST. And we've also got a great Coolbet contest. For those of you that like to bet the CFL, perfect night to say that because the Bombers are in action. But I'll remind you again, and actually I guess we'll have to pull our first qualifier tomorrow. If you like to bet on the Canadian Football League, and you do bet on the Canadian Football League, get on over to coolbet.com. Any CFL bet of $10 or more, or if you do a couple $5 bets, just take a screen cap of it and send that along with your information via email to contest@winnipegsportstalk.com. We'll be picking a qualifier each week. All those qualifiers will get a marble, and we'll do a special marble race amongst qualifiers of cool bettors early in August for a trip for two on the Huss bus to the Labor Day Classic with the 1930 crew trip. You'll have transport to and from Winnipeg to Regina, 2 nights hotel, tickets to the Labor Day game, a bunch of cool swag. So if you're already doing it, why not jump on it? And of course, don't forget, if you haven't played there before, go to Coolbet. On your first deposit, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200. All right, here we go. Now, I'm looking at this game right now, Remo, and obviously when we did the lock shop earlier, the game was 7 points. This is off the board for some reason. I'm sure it'll come back right away, but I'm seeing the spread actually went up to 8, which is just a massive number for a team that didn't look very good last week, is on the road without Kenny Lawler and without Brady Oliveira. I imagine this will probably come down, but even at 7, I am not comfortable laying the points on the Bombers. I think they find a way to win and get it done, but I'm not expecting, with the players that are out in this game, particularly on offense, that they'll just walk into the nation's capital and walk all over the Ottawa Redblacks.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it moved to -8. We're doing our, spread pool with the guys at Edmonton Sports Talk, and I took Ottawa at +6.5 on mine. I think, the Bombers will win, but I think the Bombers get into these close games. We also saw what happened when they went into Ottawa, and it seems like when the Bombers go out east, sometimes they have trouble. I'm thinking about when they got spanked by Hamilton. So we'll see how it goes, but I think this is a really good bounce back spot, but tough to lay that many points on the road for the Bombers, Huss.
I agree. I agree on that. And listen, I don't like to bet against the Bombers, so I will just stay away from that game. I do think they can win, but it's -345 on the money line. We do have a couple of exclusives for you for tonight. The Winnipeg Sports Talk parlay at the bottom of the exclusives is this. Listen, I think it's going to be on Zach Caleros, Dalton Schoen, and Nick Dembski tonight to be the key part of the Bomber offense. No surprise. We've got Schoen at 80 or more receiving yards, Nick Dembski to catch 5 or more balls, a Chris Streveler anytime touchdown, and the Bombers to win. Our pal Evdog has got that boosted up to +600 or 6-1. While we're doing, let's check out the EST parlay. What do they have? 2 points from McDavid, a Hyman goal, Oilers to win, +400. And then for those of you that are pulling for the Oilers and the Winnipeg teams, how about this one? The Ride with Huss and the Lock Shop Partner parlay. We'll take the Oilers to win, we will take the Bombers to win, and we will add the Sea Bears to win. That one is up right now at +450. Dusty and I also did a CFL parlay for later on, well, basically for the games not including tonight. Elks +5.5, We were on the other side of both the other games, so we took the overs. Over 50.5 in the Stamps Lions and over 48.5 in the Rough Riders Ticats. That's up at plus 350. Make sure to check the Coolbet exclusives. They've always got some great boosted odds there to give you the best line possible if you are throwing a little sprinkle down on the action. And again, just to finish this up, Cup Final tonight. Edmonton minus 136, Panthers plus 116. Why not question of the day for not Autocorp but Waverly and McGillivray? Do the Oilers win tonight and make this a series, or do the Panthers get within 60 minutes of giving Paul Maurice his long-awaited Stanley Cup ring? Let us know in the chat what you think for the Why Not question of the day. What do you think, Remis? Are we going to have a series, or is this going to be, will the Cup be in the house on Saturday?
Yeah, how will Florida be affected by this late travel? They traveled yesterday, got in. They're supposed to take off at 10. I think they ended up taking
major
off
time zones
afternoon.
too. Don't forget.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what Paul said on that, but I mean,
we need
time
Paul Maurice
zones.
to talk about the travel that they had, the big flight from Florida. They got in late, I think 7, 8 p.m. That's way later than anticipated. And yes, 2-hour time zone difference. I mean, this game is at 7. What is that? 7 o'clock. I guess it's at the normal time, right? It would be 8. Sorry,
yeah, 7. Might be about 7:22 or so. I was thinking about you when they dropped the puck at 7:22 in game number 2.
Why did they? Yeah, I know why they do that. So we tune in, but it should be illegal. They need to put a law in that when you advertise a time, advertise the puck drop time as well. Don't tell us the BS start time and then give us a 30-minute pregame. I don't mind a 10-minute pregame. I can wait 10 minutes, but that was like 25, 30-minute pregame when they said puck drop is 7:30. It said it was gonna be 7. I tuned in. It was terrible, but I'm taking Edmonton. I think they get a win. McDavid shows up. They got the travel advantage here. They're at home. It's going to be tough, but I like Edmonton. McDavid, he's not going to get shuttled. Like Evan Rodriguez has more goals than McDavid in this series. I saw Max Lapierre on X dunking on. Someone was saying Max Lapierre has more Cup Final goals than McDavid. So
that changes tonight. Changes tonight. I'm actually, the one other thing I have a sprinkle on tonight. Connor McDavid will score plus 125. That's in Coolbet under the Florida Panthers Oilers game. You click on it with all the options all there as well. Fun show today. We got to get the pot up so people can check it out before kickoff tonight between the Bombers and the Redblacks. Tomorrow on the program, we will break down tonight's game between the Bombers and Ottawa. We will discuss Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final, and we'll talk more Jets offseason with Scotty Billick. Murat Atesh coming up. Or Scott and Murat, they're both on tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be an awesome show.
Scott and Murat. No. Is Scott tomorrow? Didn't we have Scott?
Well, I know Murat's on the show tomorrow as well. Yeah,
we had Scott on.
Scott earlier. All these days,
it's Brandon.
It's been a weird week. It's
Brandon and Murat. We had Scott on Wednesday.
I was mixing up Scott and Rewicki. Excuse me on that.
Rewicki, Murat Atesh. We'll see if Murat. Where is he? Is he in the woods? Again, you're going to have to tune in to see what exotic location he's in.
He's like 2024 Carmen Sandiego. Every time he comes on the. Where in the world is Murat Atesh? We'll find out tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Here, in terms of 90s TV references, when you said Kenny, wake up, I thought you were doing wake up, like Wake Up San Francisco with Danny Tanner on Full House. So I might have to pull out that sounder. But here, I'll let you sign off. The show.
You got it.
Here.
Hey, thanks to everyone for hanging out. Thanks to Pagnotta, Kenny Wiebe, Darrin Bauming. Again, don't forget Bonfire post game right after the final buzzer tonight over at the Bonfire channel. And if you haven't already checked it out, please get on over to our YouTube page. You might be watching it already, and give a little look and some feedback on CFL 110, our debut episode yesterday with Jeff Hamilton right after Winnipeg Sports Talk. That's up on the channel as well. And subscribe to the podcast feed wherever you get your favorite pods. Just put in CFL 110. Thanks again to all of our sponsors and all of you for hanging out with us. Go Blue. Hopefully we'll have a Victory Friday edition, the one that we missed last Friday. And hopefully we'll be talking about a 1-on-1 football team coming back to get ready for the British Columbia Lions. Enjoy the game tonight. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow. Marbles and more on a Big Friday show on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube